Alright, so today we'll be addressing the off-idle performance of a Holley carburetor. This is a Holley 570, but everything but a Holley 600, and even a Holley 600 is set up basically entirely the same. So there's a few basic items that need to be addressed for off-idle performance. Mainly the idle mixture screws, the CARB idle screw, the pump cam, which if you see the 1 and the 2 there, I got mine on the 1 setting. You have 2 settings for that, and that controls your squirt nozzle, which is right down there. So those few items are what are most important to be tuned correctly for best off-idle performance. So the CARB idle screw, that's pretty simple. That just opens your throttle blades, your primary throttle blades to be exact. Turning it in opens them up, and turning it out closes them up. So naturally opening it up would be more air. Engine idle will raise, but you can't go too high or else we'll flip this baby over, because you have transfer slots. We'll see if we can see them. See them somewhere here. Open it up. Okay. Those transfer slots, that line there, if you get it too much open to where you're into the transfer slots, pull this back here. If you get it too far open to where, when you're into your transfer slots, you're already past where the idle mixture adjustment plays in, and you're too far. So you can't go that far. And in that sense, flip it over again, you would have to adjust your secondary throttle blades, open them up a little bit more, and there's this little screw right there, and that'll open them up. And you got to pull the carburetor off to adjust that, unfortunately, on a Holley. I believe Quick Fuel sells a part that you can do it. You can adjust that screw that's over there without taking the carb off. But anyway, so that's kind of your CARB idle screw adjustment. Now your idle mixture screws, which are usually on the front of the carburetor, those need to be adjusted preferably 1/4 of a turn at a time, and generally people end up with 2.5 turns out, and they have to be adjusted equally. What you do to one, you have to do to the other. You have to keep both banks of the engine exactly the same, if you want it to be correct. So naturally, turning them in is leaning them out, and turning them out is richening them up. So, and if you don't know if they're set correct, I would suggest running them all the way down, not too hard, but running them all the way down to where they stop. Don't force it, and then taking them out. I'd say you could start with 2 turns out, 2 full turns out, and then adjust from there, and do that to both, and you'll be probably in the ballpark. And finally, one of the most important aspects is the pump cam and squirter nozzle system, or whatever you want to call it. Accelerator pump, I don't know, whatever. So you have 2 slots, and I believe 2 allows in more air, and slot number 1 puts in more fuel. So you want it, and you want it adjusted. You adjust this lever arm here. So the second you crack this throttle, it's moving that arm, or else you're going to be opening the throttle blades and not putting any fuel into it. And then you generally a 31 squirter, which is stock on Holleys, is just fine. But I run a number 38 in my car, and they look about like this. Cost about 20 bucks. It's kind of stupid, but that's life with a carburetor. So, and you'll find the happy spot with that where it really wants to run just by pulling it out and testing it. And I would suggest pulling the carburetor off to take that out, because if you drop that into your engine, you're going to be crying. So, but all these systems have to work together perfectly. And like I mentioned, the transfer slots, you can't be into the transfer slots to start out with, because then you have nothing to transition from your accelerator or squirt pump cam system, whatever you want to call it. You don't have anything to transition from your off idle to your jets if you're running your idle when you're already in your transition slots. So that's something to think about, and what a lot of people mess up. I'll go over jets really quick. They're I'll actually address float bowl adjustment. So you adjust your float bowl by undoing that screw. Now what you'd want to do is there's a little gasket under there, and before you go to adjusting, you'd want to pop it up with a screwdriver, and you'll see it'll pop up. And generally that screw will come unscrewed from this nut, so they don't turn together. I have mine set where I want it, so I'm not going to go fiddling with mine, but you would pop that up, and generally you'd want to adjust maybe a half a turn at a time if you're already in the ballpark. And you would have your sight plug out here, and your engine would be off, and you'd have to crank it over, let the float bowl fill up, and then shut it off. It takes about maybe 5 to 10 seconds, and you take that sight plug out. Now the fuel should barely trickle out of there, not really come out, and it should be it's right on the bottom lip, just right there, and that's where it's designed to run, So, and people always ask, well, should I run ported vacuum or manifold vacuum? Well, you can run either or. On your on your distributor, if it's vacuum advanced, it's already going to be advanced if it's into manifold vacuum, but ported vacuum doesn't have a vacuum reading at idle. So unless you have a big lopey high duration cam, you're probably perfectly safe to run ported vacuum. So I suggest ported vacuum. I've run both on different cars, and I prefer that. Now the jets are pretty simple. Most carburetors, don't quote me on that, but on this I mean, most carburetors come within the relative ballpark of the size of jets that you should run. So you should never really be increasing more than 5, ever. So if we can get this gasket off of here so we can take a peek in. Gotta set the phone down for a quick second. Don't want to ruin our reusable gaskets. That one's kind of crimping right down there. There we go. So your jets are located right there, and you would just take a screwdriver, unscrew those, and put some new ones in. Usually with a Holley, you're safe to go 1 or 2 bigger, but generally Holleys are within the ballpark. And I'm not going to pull this metering plate off, or this metering block, which is that part right there. But on the other side, that's your power valve. Now you have different numbers of power valves, and you want to run a power valve that's half. Take your manifold vacuum and divide it by half, and that's what size power valve you should be running. So usually you're fine above 15 if your manifold vacuum reads above 15, but anything lower than that, and you want to think about changing that out. So anyway, that's kind of a general overview of a Holley carburetor. If I didn't address anything, just let me know. I'm sure I forgot something, so if you got a question, I'd be happy to answer it. Thanks.